and welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain. I'm Lauren Hillman with Theatrix Youth Theater, and today I'm interviewing Lexy Cox. Lexy is a professional choreographer and dancer. Hi, Lexy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm glad you're here. Would you tell us a bit more about the jobs you've had in the performing arts?
Absolutely. So in addition to being a professional dancer, I've also gone behind the scenes and been able to be a choreographer and even a dance captain. I did a bit of time in New York, so it's really fun to work behind the scenes and make the performances come to life. So that's one of the great things about being a choreographer. You get to make up the routines that you see on stage. And past that, I also now adjudicate dance competitions. I run a dance convention, I run a competition, and I teach teachers how to teach dance all over the world. So it's become a really interesting career, and I've dabbled in a lot of different things, but most of my work has been in the dance field professionally.
Awesome. Let's go through and talk about your history, but kind of a step by step. So how would you say you got started in the performing arts?
Yeah, so I started at a dance studio. So I did dance in my community at Port Moody School of Dance. And then when I was about 10 years old, I got into theatrics, and it was my first taste of doing musical theater and putting what my skill set as a dancer to be featured in the theatrics productions. So I started in dance, then I fell in love with musical theater, and I just couldn't get enough. So during my time at school, I was doing productions both with theatrics and with my dance studio, and I did some competitions in there too to compete, to see where I was sitting and ranking with other dancers. And then as I got older, I started also adding in professional performances, and I did some work with Royal City Musical Theater. So it led me right into university, and I went to university for dance, and it was a theater performance degree with a major in dance. So I still got to do my singing and acting, which really helped. And I did that in Toronto at Ryerson University. And while in Toronto, I started doing some professional performances and exploring the performing arts scene, the musical theater scene in Toronto. And then when I graduated, it took me to New York, and I did some work as a dance captain there. And I just haven't stopped since. So it's been a lot of productions, a lot of shows, but I did get my start at a local dance studio and theatrics.
That's awesome. Yeah, it really does sound like you haven't stopped this whole time.
Yeah, it's been very busy, but so enjoyable.
I believe it. I'm personally someone who's an actor who enjoys movement a lot, despite not being a competitive dancer. And I never did it competitively. Why don't you tell us what you would see as like the benefits to competing? You said it was nice to see how you ranked compared to other dancers. What other benefits did it have for you?
Yeah, competition is a nice, healthy way to be inspired to do better, to see how you can improve, and you get that feedback from the judges, which is really nice. So it is a learning environment, even though it is a competitive environment, and you get feedback on how to improve, and it's motivating to see other performers on stage, to see what they're doing, to see how they perform, to always be pushing yourself to that next level.
Nice. And you now adjudicate your own competitions. So tell me a little more about that. In particular, I guess I'm wondering, what are you looking for in performances? What makes someone stand out?
So I do train adjudicators across the world, and one of the things we're training them to look for is that balance of technique and artistry. So we aren't just looking for the best ballerina, and we aren't just looking for the most smiles and energy. We want that blend of both, because we all know that's what makes a great performance. We want stage presence and technique to bring that together. So I'm always looking for a passion, a love of performance, with technical excellence, and then of course that little something extra that makes them stand out, which is, you know, crossing over into audition skills and that sort of a thing. So making a routine unique, have a fun theme, maybe a great costume, but a way to make it memorable for the audience.
So you basically started as a dancer who was using all of these skills and developing them yourself. And now you're training other people in them, and even training the adjudicators in what to look for. So if you were talking to kids right now who were at any level of dance, whether they're just starting out or they're avid competitive dancers already, what would you say to them in terms of how they can improve and what skills they should be focusing on?
For any dancer who's looking to expand their skill set, the best thing you can do is to take more classes or more styles, to be exposed to more in the dance world. So let's say maybe you've taken a ballet class, maybe you want to try a tap class or a hip hop class. And there's a lot of ways to do that even from home online. There's lots of dance tutorials on YouTube, and there's lots of local dance studios that do what's called a Bring a Friend Week, where you can just go try a class for free. So there's lots of ways to kind of try out new dance styles, but the more you can try, the better, because then you find what you truly love and what inspires you. And like all art forms, the more time you're training and the broader your skill set, the better you're going to be on stage.
Very true. Do you feel like kids need to have, or when I say kids, I mean kids who plan to pursue this professionally, do they need to have really strong technical skills in all different styles of dance if they wanted to go into professional musical theater performance?
Well, to be a professional musical theater performer, it really depends on the show. So when I moved back to Vancouver, I actually went and did some teaching at Capilano University with their musical theater program. And the first time I was hired on there, I was working with them on their tap evaluations. So for them, that was the skill set they needed to tap. But not all musical theater shows have a tap scene, right? So it depends on the show. And then the second time I went to go work at Cap University, we were working on Fosse, which is a jazz style. So really in musical theater, depends on the show you're auditioning for. And what is currently trending in musical theater is this kind of pedestrian movement. So it's really for those movers, not so much dancers, that anyone can really excel at, because they're taking your everyday movements and putting them to music. So depends on the show, but I would say the foundation of everything is going to be ballet. So if you had one style that you could try, I would suggest ballet first. And then if you're really lucky, adding in some jazz and tap, and to go above and beyond, putting in some hip hop or urban styles so that you're really staying current with what's trending right now.
What did you study the most? What was your expertise?
That is a great question. I did study everything. My expertise has become acrobatics, has become tricks, because it is a very rare style of dance. Not many people specialize in it. So that has become my specialty. But I went to university for ballet, and I grew up doing every style of dance. And right now I'm taking my own tap class just for fun. So I have taken every style of dance, and I do try to stay on top of the latest trends. But now going into the industry, I am mostly focusing on acrobatics.
That would be what I would want to do if I was a dancer. It just sounds like so much fun.
It is a lot of fun. I will say the big tricks are tending to be in more shows now. So even if it's a show with a jazz routine, maybe they're going to throw in an aerial, which is a no-handed cartwheel, or a backflip, something to make the dance extra exciting. I know even when I was in Charlottetown watching Anna Green Gables, which is a more traditional style musical theater piece that has a lot of ballet sequences, they still had big tumbling moments and big tricks. So it is coming into lots of shows.
I love it. Let's talk now to the kids out there who are not dancers. I would say our current base of theatrics students, we only have a handful of them who are, say, really strong or competitive dancers. Most would have, this basic skills and can move and learn to dance, but they don't necessarily come with significant training. How would you go about working with those students and getting them to learn their bodies and movement a little bit better?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will reference back when we did Cats the first time at Theatrix, most of the cast was actors and movers. There was maybe a handful of us that were competitive dancers, but majority of that cast were actors and movers.
We actually talked to Coco on this interview.
Yeah.
And she talked to us about how she choreographed that specifically for non-dancers.
Absolutely. So it's really interesting to see, because so many theatrics productions have been put on with actors and movers. And we've done lots of big dance shows with those actors and those movers. So it's very inspiring to see how much you can do as an actor. So I will say that, and Cats was a perfect example. Ways to start exploring movement. And sometimes it just needs to be done in the, the living room where you're not worried about anybody watching you, and exploring different types of music. So put on different music. How does it make you feel? How does it make you move? What's your reaction to music? And then you can start throwing in some different ideas or concepts like levels, movements that are high, movements that are low, movements that are fast, movements that are slow. You want to think in opposition to each other. And then once you just start thinking about, maybe it's a word, maybe it's swirling, maybe it's thumping, you start putting words in there too. And now you're trying to explore movement from an acting standpoint as an exercise. So you're putting in objectives, just like you do when you're doing a monologue or a scene. And the more you can explore movement, the more confidence you get moving. And that'll help you when you're in a rehearsal situation, because you already have that bravery going in, for sure.
That's a good thing to bring up there, is bravery. I find a lot of young people especially can be nervous when it comes to trying something like dancing or singing that they don't have confidence in yet. They might be great, they just don't have the confidence in themselves. Do you have any words of advice for them?
Yeah, I would say it's like any exercise. You need to trust it's a safe space. And that's why you are somewhere like Theatrix. It's a safe space. You get to try new things. You get to be brave. There's a great community and support network there. So I think just entering it, knowing you're in a safe space, is really a big part of it. And what do you have to lose? Go big. Try something. It might work, it might not. Have fun with it. You won't know if you don't try. And I will say, using those shows like Cats is some inspiration, because they're actors, they're movers, and they did a phenomenal dance show. And it was so great that we did it twice. So, putting your own worries and your own thoughts aside, trying to just, try new things, be brave. You never know. Maybe dance is your thing and you just haven't tried it yet. So I'd say just going for it is huge.
I would like to talk a little about your history with Theatrix, because you grew up doing our programs, and you mentioned Cats already. What other shows did you do with us?
Oh, I did lots of shows. My sister and I both did multiple shows a year. My very first one, I believe, was in 1999 and was Godspell. I believe that was my first show. I think that was 22 years ago. And then I actually did Godspell again as a teenager. And then I worked a little bit with them when they did it the third time round. We did lots of shows. We did Grease. I'd say we did Cats. We did Les Mis a couple of times. And then, of course, all the created shows that Theatrix did, which there were so many that the students wrote with Deb and with Peter, and Coco was there too. So there was a whole collaboration of people, as well as the students putting together shows. And we did a couple of those a year as well. So I would say a lot of productions.
With that in mind, from all of those productions that you did in the past, are there any special memories that you might have to share with us?
Oh, yes. I mean, there's so many. I could probably talk for an hour about special memories. I would say what I took away the most was the friendships and just the way you feel when you're working on a show. When you do a show, it is the strongest bond and friendship. There are so many wonderful things. And having the mentors, obviously, Deb and Coco and Peter, they're still a very big part of my life. So that part, having the mentors that stay with you, it's not just you do a show and you're done. If you're part of that Theatrix family, you're in it. So I'd say it's the friendships and the mentorship, but going to specific moments that were really special. I know when we walked into the Stanley Theater to do Cats, and we were doing our tech there, and just feeling like, I can't believe I'm on the Stanley stage, with this full production from a community theater group. It was a really special moment for me, for sure, to feel like this is it. This is the big stage. This is Vancouver's theater. So that was a really special moment for me.
Okay, I do have a few other questions that I would like to talk to you about.
Sure.
You mentioned pedestrian movement as
Mhm.
a style of dance that's trending in musical theater right now. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm picturing the last production of like Waitress I saw, Dear Evan Hansen, and shows like that. Is there, though, a way you could perhaps describe that for people or give examples of how they might be able to develop that or learn that skill, since it's not a classical style?
Yeah, absolutely. So the concept of pedestrian movement is movement you do as a person. So a perfect example is Waitress. So, they lift up their arm, they lift up their other arm, they take down your order. So it's something that you would do as a waitress that they do in the show, but all of a sudden it's dance movement because there's a gesture, and a count that they write something down. So that's the concept, that anything you do as a person or as a character choice can be put into choreography and into movement. Another great example, as you said, Dear Evan Hansen, a lot of it is walking around the stage, but you're walking with intention. You're walking on account of the music. There's a lot of moments where they stop and look up, or they contract down to show either inspiration or sadness. Those gestures that we do as people are just exaggerated into movement as dance.
Now, you also mentioned that you started your own competitions. And I'm wondering, first of all, how you did that, but also why.
Yeah, so I started working with a couple of companies in Toronto, and I adjudicated, I would say, 10 weekends of the year. That was what I was doing there. And then I started getting hired by competitions as a consultant to give advice on how to run events, how to make them run smoothly. And then a couple of years ago, I got approached by a competition to be the director. So they asked me if I was interested in the position, and I said yes. And so that was something I got to take on as the role of the director. And it's great because I was choosing who the judges were, and what types of awards were given out. We do this thing called special awards or judges choice awards, which are moments to really acknowledge those special moments on stage. So maybe it wasn't the best kick or the best jump or the best technical moment, but maybe they had the best connection to storytelling or character. Maybe they had that will and that drive to give it 110%, even though they didn't have the best technique. And so there's ways to acknowledge different people on stage. So I think that's a really great element of our competition as well. And, finding ways to make competitive dance really fun for everyone to enjoy, having levels for everyone to feel like they are competing at their level that they're ready for, so that everyone can get up on stage.
Speaking of all these competitions, how do you see things playing out this year with COVID? I imagine you've probably already been booked to adjudicate things this spring. What does that look like this year?
Yes, so I have adjudicated an online competition, which was entirely done over Zoom. I also got to adjudicate a in-person competition that was just solos and duos, so just one person or two people at a time. So it was a lot smaller event. And right now I am consulting for events to happen in May that will be groups, everything full size, assuming that that'll be an option. So it is 3 different models that we'll see this season. We will see online competitions, we will see solo duo events where it's just a smaller event, and we will see those full-scale group events, assuming that we're still allowed to be inside venues, but they are competing usually one studio at a time, so there isn't any cross-contamination, or you're not expanding your bubble. So it is happening, and it's kind of 3 new formats, but it looks like we will still get to compete this year, which is really great.
Awesome. Let's talk now a little bit about choreography specifically. I
Mhm.
was just thinking from what you said, when you have these groups on stage, choreography is going to change a lot this year because you can't have the same contact or closeness on stage. So that's a challenge in choreography this year. How are you seeing people get around that, and how are you going about getting around that?
There have been kind of 2 different models. There's been the everybody dance in your own little square model, which you've probably seen pictures from people's dance studios on social media. They all have the little square taped out on the floor, and everyone just dances inside their square. So you're not changing formations, you just do the dance where you are. So that's one method that's happening. Another method is that as long as everyone's wearing a mask, you're allowed to move around the space. So they're still not touching, but they are changing formations. So I am seeing both, and a lot of new creative things have to happen because, of course, we're so used to contact being a big part of the performing arts, lifts, partnering, even just interacting close and seeing each other and reacting is a big part. So really trying to focus themes and expressions that go out to the audience instead of to each other. So it just takes a new way of thinking and a new way of planning out your routines, but it is definitely a harder process than when you just get to go in with full artistic freedom and create a piece.
For sure. On that same note, when you are choreographing a new routine, what are some of the things that you're going to start thinking about right at the very beginning to figure out what exactly you're going to have the actors and the performers do?
Well, the first thing I'm always looking at is, what is the story? What is the purpose? Why is there a dance sequence here? Is the purpose to get this actor's emotion from here to here? Is it to express a journey? What is the purpose of the piece? And as soon as I start with that, if I know what is the purpose of the piece, I know where I need to get those actors for the finish. I know it's just like if you were going to do a monologue or a scene, you have to figure out what is the intention and what is the story going to be to get us there. And once we know that, then we can make artistic choices with movement to tell the story. But it's always thinking about, what are we saying with this piece, and how do we need that actor or that performer to get to the next scene? It's usually a connecting piece, choreography.
True. And now you mentioned earlier things like levels. Those are one of the things that you would play with in your choreography. Playing with levels, you mentioned speed and opposition, right? Fast or slow. Are there any other things when you go into choreography, when you're just starting to create a routine that you are thinking about?
Yeah, I would say even going, when we were talking about opposition, strong, soft, just thinking about anything that could be more dramatic because of how you've set it up. So you want to think about, if something is really sharp, it's more effective when there's something smooth after it, instead of just being sharp, 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 sharp. It would be like if you were just yelling a monologue the whole time, or if you were just belting a song. It needs that variety to be really effective and to be really capturing your audience. But I also explore with movement just thinking about an emotion to lead intention. So let's say it's happiness, or let's say it's excitement. Whatever that emotion is can help lead your movement as well. And I also do this fun exercise where I'll start at one side of the room and I have to do everything that leads with one body part. Let's say it's your elbow. So everything you do has to start from your elbow, or saying, okay, everything has to start from your knee, just to find what is a way that I wouldn't naturally move, but that could be creative. So I do give myself little exercises to spark inspiration or spark creativity.
That sounds like something you do, with your students.
Yep.
Do you choreograph mostly ahead of time, or is your process more collaborative and working with the people in the room?
I do a mix of both. I am very much a planner. So I will map out my routine based on the sheet music. So I will take note of where, this is the build of the song, or, this is the chorus where everybody comes together. I do map out the sections ahead of time, and I will create a frame of what the piece will look like. But whenever you have movers in the room, you are going to feed off of their energy, and it may lead to new things. I've had some of the most brilliant pieces come out of somebody's mistakes. So I may start teaching a phrase and they interpret it differently, and I go, switching gears, we're all doing that version, it looks great. So there's so much that it's a collaboration, performers and choreographers, that I may go in with a plan, but who I have there in the room and their energy will change the piece. It always does.
It is honestly very impressive to see the way dance can tell a story, tell us character, move us emotionally, work with the music, and still somehow be beautiful and impressive at the same time. So what you guys do is incredible. I'm just going to say that now. For kids who are currently dancers or thinking of pursuing dance or performing arts in the way that you have, what professional career options are out there for them? If they're not going to be on stage as a dancer, or even if they are, there are many ways to go about doing that. So why don't you lay out some of the career options that they would have?
Yeah, there are so many career options. I mean, first and foremost, if you're in theater or you're in dance, you have so many skills that you don't even realize that you have. So I will say that first off, even if you don't go into the performing arts, you have so many skills. So all those things about being a people person, about having bravery, about understanding commitment, all of those skills go to so many different careers. So even if it's not performing arts, just know you're already one step ahead because you have all those amazing things. But I mean, you could be a teacher, you can do any type of dance choreography or create pieces. I've done created shows that are performed like parades, big type things like that. Or even now there's all these things called brand ambassadors. You may get to create something that's performed at a mall to promote a new project. Obviously there's the whole side of things like TV and film. There's so many opportunities now for movers in TV series to play characters that need to have those special movement skills. And then from a behind the scenes look, I've done things like I mentioned, running a dance convention, running a competition. So creating the things that people go to. So organizing big events, planning events, and then thinking even one step further back than that, now I'm teaching other teachers and other adjudicators how to do those jobs too. So there's that whole other side of things that you're teaching the next generation how to do it, or explaining to them these are things that can be done. So there are so many layers to it that go beyond just I do dance and I went to university for dance.
Before we go, for sure, I definitely would like to leave today with your last words of wisdom. What you have to say to kids out there who are thinking about pursuing dance in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I would say the number one thing is be brave, be confident, and trust that everyone has something to bring on stage, because so many stereotypes of dance are dance has to look like this or has to be this. And it's really not true. Anyone can be a dancer. Anyone can be successful with dance. And it really comes from your passion and how you love it. And like any performance, if you are truly passionate about it, that shows in your stage presence. And the more styles you can try, the more confident you're going to be. So just get yourself out there and get to class and just trust that you have something great to give and be brave.